Hey homeschool friends, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we are going to be chatting about Sonlight Language Arts. So if you're anything like I was, I knew I wanted to use Sonlight. I knew I wanted all the books. I wanted the history, the Bible, the literature. I wanted that. But then I had questions about the language arts. And so I plan on sharing with you how it's been going, what we have really liked about the language arts, as well as the things that we have changed within the language arts program. And so specifically, I'm going to be talking about Language Arts Level 1 as well as Level 2 because I just finished these two programs with my kiddos. And so Level 2 I finished up with my third grader. He is just about to turn 9. And Level 1 I finished up with my second grader. She is 7.5. Just to give you a little bit of reference for where we are. And so if you have at all been curious about Sonlight Language Arts, stay tuned because I'm going to be sharing a lot about my experience in particular, but also just the program in general. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel if you're new here, or welcome back if you've been coming for a while. Like I said, we're talking all about Sonlight Language Arts today. So I'm going to split this into a few different sections to hopefully make this a very useful review for you guys. So the first thing I'm going to briefly chat on is what comes with the programs, but I'm going to link a video I made last year where I went in depth on what is involved. I did a flip through. I went through a number of different weeks. So I'm going to link that above because I feel like that is really useful to be able to see into the program. So I'm going to do that briefly, but I'm going to spend the majority of my time on what worked for me. How did the program work for my kids in particular? What did we use and love? What did we change? Things like that. And then I'm going to end it out with my plans for the future because I do have two younger kids that are coming up through the programs, and I have kind of vague plans for what I want to do with them in terms of Sonlight Language Arts. So basically what I've learned and how that has shaped my future plans for my younger kids. So let's just hop in. So like I said, I made a flip through of actually level K1 and 2 of Sonlight Language Arts. And so maybe I will just pop in a video here and show you a bit about the program. So in this video, I went through the teacher's guide extensively. That's probably the most useful thing I feel from this video, as I took you through the weekly grid, what's all included, how it's different through the three programs, and then I took you into kind of the specific instructions for each week, and then I showed a number of different weeks. I also took you through all of the readers that come with the language arts program. Spoiler alert, I love the readers. I love the Sonlight readers. And so in just a bit, I will share with you the ones that were my favorite as well as my kids' favorite readers from the year. So as you can see from the video, the basics of what you get are the teacher's guide as well as the readers and the worksheets, because there are student sheets that come with the language arts. They're very minimal in comparison to other programs. Like for instance, there's like 3 pages for the whole week, including your copywork application, as well as a place to start your creative expression assignments. And so there are student sheets, but they're fairly minimal, which is very representative of Sonlight's philosophy when it comes to language arts. So those are the resources for language arts. Now, to hop into how it worked for me, like I said, we have completed Language Arts 1 and Language Arts 2. Now, quick caveat, we didn't use it in its entirety. I skipped around, and for a number of reasons, mostly because I was finding the perfect fit for my kids, and I started them a little on the easy side, so we were able to work through things quickly. But based on the fact that Sonlight is designed in a very spiral nature, so that some of the concepts that are brought up either in the grammar section or the creative expression sections will be brought up again in future levels, just at greater detail. And so to me, to be able to kind of pick and choose which lessons we did for level 1 and 2 made complete sense to me, but I have a very good feel for how the program works and how it works for us. So to just kind of work my way through the grid, which I showed in depth in that video, and there are also free downloads on the Sonlight website so you can kind of get a feel for the program yourself. So feel free to do that. I actually have a link down below if you wanted to go through that link to find what you needed. So let me just start at the top of the grid. And so in the grid for Sonlight Language Arts, you have a phonics spelling section really right on top. So you're talking your skills section, because when it comes to these earlier levels of Sonlight Language Arts, they are very much geared towards skill building. So learning to read, early spelling, things like that. And as you know, these things vary from child to child, how quickly they pick things up, or if a certain technique works to teach your kids to read. So when it comes to my kids, I had a struggling reader when we first came to Sonlight because I did not start our homeschooling journey with Sonlight. I started with some other wonderful programs, and then we moved into Sonlight, and then I was curious about their language arts. But at that point, my son was a struggling reader, and we had already gone through a number of different phonics programs, which actually I will link a video where I compared the ones we used, which was Logic of English, All About Reading, and Becca. So I'll link that in case you're curious about phonics programs. But by the time we came to Sonlight Language Arts, I knew we were not planning on using the phonics program. And so I cannot speak to it. Honestly, we've never used it. What I know about it is that it is very phonics focused, that it builds on each other and the phonograms kind of come week after week, and it's very logical. And I know some kids really thrive under that system, especially if your child is natural at languages. I think the Sonlight phonics program looks wonderful. I can't really speak either way to it, so take that with a grain of salt. But we did try the Sonlight spelling program, which in these first few years, like K through 3 or 4, something like that, there is a spelling included in the language arts, and there is a whole tab on the grid, and there is a list of words that you will tackle each week with your kids, and they have a technique for doing that. There's total support within the instructor's guide for how to teach the spelling. But then after that level, then Sonlight encourages you pick up different programs such as Spelling UC or All About Spelling, some other things that they'll suggest. So what we found is when we got into the spelling, the list form type spelling is my son did not take to it. He's not a natural speller, and that's okay. And the list form just did not work. He had no retention for any of the words. And I think part of it is the spelling and the phonics are very much linked in the Sonlight program. So what the kids are learning in phonics, they're reinforcing in spelling, and that's wonderful. We just weren't using the phonics, you know what I mean? And we tried the spelling for pretty much the whole of the past fall semester. It just didn't work. It wasn't for him. And so we have since switched to Spelling UC fairly recently. And so you can follow my update videos if you want to know how that's going. But I learned that a list form of teaching spelling wasn't going to work for my son. And that is how the Sonlight spelling is structured in these early years. All right, and then to move down the grid a bit more, you have a whole section of some of these like add-on or extra language arts supplements, I guess is the best word for it. So things like handwriting and vocabulary, and they are not included in the language arts program. In other words, if you order like Language Arts 2 and you get the bundle, you will not get these extra books. You won't get a handwriting book or a vocab book, but you can add those on, and then it is scheduled in the instructor's guide in case you choose to do that optional workbook, for instance. And we do the vocabulary. We love Wordly Wise. It's been a wonderful program. I really like it because I have a number of kids, 4 kids, and sometimes I just need my older kids to have something to do, and the Wordly Wise workbooks are very good. We don't use Handwriting Without Tears or Explode the Code, and the reason is Explode the Code is very much a good reinforcement for the Sonlight phonics program. And again, we're not using that, so it just didn't make sense for me to pick up the Explode the Code books. We've used them in the past. We love them. They're a good resource. I feel like they pair up very nicely with Sonlight's phonics. So there's that. And then the handwriting, I've always been a huge fan of Danielian style handwriting. So we've used that from the beginning of our homeschool experience. I have a video of that if you have no idea what Danielian handwriting is. It's fantastic. I really like it. My kids really like it. So anyway, those are the optional subjects within the instructor's guide. And then it moves to the bottom 2, which, okay, that's what we use Sonlight Language Arts for. I love these 2 sections, starting with the readers. I really love the readers Sonlight has picked out. I feel like in these earlier years, it can be a little challenging to find exactly where your students are going to fall out in like their skills, their ability to read these books. But it has worked out really well. And even though we're not following the schedule in level 1 or level 2 for the readers, we have used all the readers, and my kids have read all the readers, and I love that. I am moving my son into Language Arts 3. We just started here in January of 2023. And we're actually following the reader schedule for the first time, only because he took off with his reading and he's now capable of reading those books. But as for the level 1 and level 2 readers, I think these are just great readers no matter what program you use. And that has been true for us. And so here's the stack. You'll see a lot of them are the Dr. Seuss or the I Can Read It All by Myself beginner books. You know the type. And so those have been perfect for my kids. Level 1 also comes with these books, the I Can Read It books, and these are fantastic. This really is kind of the core of the phonics program. So we read through these and they were useful for my kids, but I feel like we skipped around in these and then really hit these ones hard because my kids were a lot more interested in these. Okay, and so for me and my family, we have just gone the Abeka phonics route and it's worked for us. It just has. And so as for when we can pick up these types of books, we can pick these up when my kids are about halfway through Abeka grade 1 phonics. And that is about the time when they have enough skills and capability to pick up these books, and then they really enjoy them. They enjoy these more than the Abeka books, even though the Abeka books really kind of tie into where they are skill-wise. And so we have like things like Cat in the Hat, Put Me in the Zoo, A Fly Went By. Oh, they like that one. They love these ones. One Fish, Two Fish, Green Eggs and Ham. And then these ones were great too. A Big Ball of String and The Best Trick. All of these were really spot on, perfect for that level. And my kids loved them. So those are the level 1 readers. My daughter just finished them up and I have just moved her into grade 2, January 2023 as well. So she's done with grade 1. As for the grade 2 books, I'd say I like these even more. They have just some amazing choices here. So I'll just show them to you real quick. So Greg's Microscope, my son really liked this because he really likes science. Amelia Bedelia, I bet my daughter will love that. Owls at Home, that's a good one. It's one of the first ones, along with Mouse Tales. And a number of Frog and Toad books. 3 Frog and Toad books. Actually, these might be my son's favorite. I have to think. Okay. Oh, these are really good too. So there was a number of these level 4 step into reading books, and they're the history ones. So the Titanic and Pompeii. Oh, my son loved these ones too. And Nate the Great was good. And then we ended with this chapter book. And this is Sword in the Tree. So this is the very last one we read. And it was so good, you guys. And so by the time we got to this one, he really felt like a reader. He really felt proud of himself. This author, Clyde Robert Beulah, so good. It was very historical in nature, but it was gripping. The story was really good and approachable. Like, I really like his writing. I'm going to pick up more of his books, and I think actually Sonlight has a lot more of his books. As for my son's favorites here, it would be Frog and Toad, these history ones, and The Sword in the Tree. That's what he liked the most. There actually was, and I forgot to mention this, the first half of the level 2 readers is the Beginner's Bible, but I didn't really assign that as part of school just because of what I said, how we were skipping around a bit. But everything else we read, he read this whole stack, and that is what my daughter's going to start picking up. I'm going to wait probably till she is done with a full grade 1 Abeka phonics before starting this stack, but it'll be great. So those are the readers. As for the creative expression, which is the composition or writing part of the Sonlight Language Arts program, you guys, this is the part which, if you watch that old video of mine where I did the flip through, I chatted about the fact that I initially struggled with the most. But I have flipped like 180 degrees on that, and it is probably one of my favorite parts of the program. So let me first talk about how they teach creative writing before I talk about how it works for me. So in these younger years, a lot of the assignments will be either like an imagination story or even practice on narration. Like read your favorite fairy tale and have your child narrate it back to you, focusing on getting it in the right order, or they could do a descriptive paragraph, or they could write a thank you note. And what is important when you're talking these like kindergarten level 1, level 2, is that I had to learn that they don't have to do this themselves. At first, when I started the program, I was like, how in the world are they going to know how to structure this paragraph so it actually makes sense, so that it leads with kind of the topic sentence and then it gives a proper conclusion? And really what it comes down to is sometimes I just didn't need all that stuff. What I would do is I would just encourage them to come up with their kind of like creativity. Like, I want to hear from them. I want to hear their little voices. And once they started realizing that they couldn't do it wrong, they started to really light up and their creativity really started to flow. When I first started, I felt really anxious that I wasn't teaching it right, or they weren't getting it, or they weren't doing it right. Like, how do I know if they're doing it right? How do I know what they're supposed to be doing? And I feel like once I was able to kind of relax and try to appreciate the process and teach little bits here and there, it worked so much better, and they are so much more excited for the creative expression parts of the program. And so we typically will sit down at my computer and I will act as their little scribe, which first they just really like that. And then we'll discuss whatever it is. Maybe it's a little story starter picture. And we'll be like, let's look at the picture. And like, we'll do a brainstorm day, because the way that the creative expression part of this program is set up is typically the actual writing project is 2 days. It's like typically day 3 and day 4 of the 4-day week. And the first day is brainstorming and the second day is writing from the brainstorm. And I love it. So we'll sit and we'll brainstorm and we'll type it out on my computer, and then we'll come back the next day, or typically we do it a Tuesday, Thursday. We'll come back on Thursday and we'll write it up. And then I will print it out and cut it out. And I've been starting to put it in these little notebooks. And my kids love this. They have these records of all their little creative stories, which are often quite silly and don't make a ton of sense. And in the case of my sons, sometimes a little violent, but he thinks it's hysterical. And I just have found that that has really worked. There's just such a difference in their enjoyment and my enjoyment since I have started approaching it a bit differently, which I can make a whole video about that if you guys are interested. But I love that part of the creative expression. So let me back up just a little bit when I'm talking creative expression, because there's 4 days in the program. I just talked about 3 and 4. But day 1 tends to be their copy work day. I see so much value in copy work. One, it's just good to have the kids pay attention to what they're copying, pay attention to like the commas and different things like that, and pay attention to how words are spelled. And really you're just kind of honing a lot of that skill. And the passages are taken from their readers, which they love. They love to recognize where it's coming from and the fact that they've read it already or whatever it is. They really enjoy that. And so I love the copy work. And then that second day is called copy work application, which is Sonlight's way of doing grammar. And it's grammar in the sense of nouns and verbs and things like that, but also sentence structure and possessive nouns and capitalization and punctuation, all the things, right? All the things that go with learning the English language. And for me personally, we have used the copywork application day, but we've recently kind of switched away from that a bit because I really do like the way Abeka teaches their language. It has a bit more spiral. It's a bit more hand-holding. That's just what I personally need. Now, do I think the Sonlight copywork application grammar section is enough? Yes. Yes, I do. And I think every person, every teacher, every child will come to that differently. Their ability to retain some of that stuff. Like I said, it spirals. So do you need to master it? No. Like it'll come back in level 3, level 4. So I think it's very adequate. I just personally know that that was an area I was struggling with. And so I supplemented that with Abeka, not full on Abeka. Like I don't have them do everything. Like I don't want to overwhelm my kids. But I stopped using that day 2 copywork application, but I do kind of still follow the heart behind it. Like for instance, if we are learning something in our Abeka language, I will pull that into what we chat about when we chat about the copywork. So the copywork still has the depth with which I believe that Sonlight wants it to be taught, or is designing the program to teach it that way. I'm just kind of shifting some things around that help me as the teacher. And so that kind of rounds out all the different subjects in the language arts program. The last thing I want to mention, which maybe I should have mentioned this at first, is I picked up this book. It's called The 3 R's by Ruth Bichek. Sonlight recommends this book. And this book explains a lot of the philosophy behind the Sonlight Language Arts and why they don't use a ton of worksheets and how it's structured the way it's structured. And so I highly recommend this because sometimes I feel like people can come to Sonlight Language Arts, and myself included, without a good idea of what it's trying to accomplish kind of on the long term. You see like level 1 and it can be confusing as to what the program is trying to build and those tools that it's using to do that. And the book really helps. I think watching some other content, some maybe like YouTube videos about the language arts has been really helpful for me. I think reading resources that are similar to this, that just kind of have that more natural style of teaching language arts, has been really helpful for me. So I'm in a really good place when it comes to language arts. And so that has been my experience, my kids' experience with level 1 and level 2. Now, as for my plans for the future. So knowing all this, having experienced all of this with my kids in our homeschool, what am I going to do with my kiddos that are coming up through our homeschool? So I do have twin 5-year-olds. So am I planning on using Sonlight Language Arts? Yes, definitely. 100%. Am I going to teach the phonics to my kids through Sonlight? Probably not. And like I said, it's not because I don't think it's a good program. We just have all the Abeka stuff. It's worked really well for my older 2 kids. I'm going to stick with what works for us. So we're going to keep going with Abeka. So basically, when am I going to pick up Sonlight Language Arts? Probably level 1 again. And I will probably do exactly what I did with my daughter, is we won't use the spelling or the phonics or the handwriting and explode the code, but we will use those bottom 2 sections, which is the readers and the creative expression. And again, we'll pull out those books when they have the skills to read them. And I will start doing the creative expression in a very kind of low stress way where I'm helping them. We're just building an exposure to learning how to write, and excitement for kind of the inner writing voice and the idea that they have these stories inside of them and they are little authors. So those kinds of things I will definitely be doing with my twins as we start to get into some of those higher levels in Sonlight. So I feel like I have rambled on enough, but in summary, I love the Sonlight Language Arts, and I'm so glad we are sticking with it. I deviated a bit, but I came back and I am totally on board. I feel like I've seen a lot of growth in my kids. I feel like the natural approach to teaching language arts has so many benefits. Are we doing it exactly as written? No, and that's totally okay. I'm using it how I feel like I need to for my homeschool and my personality, and my kids are flourishing under it, and that's the most important thing. So a big thumbs up for both level 1 and level 2. Again, go see that flip through video if you want to see more specifics, because that'll be really helpful. But this has just been our review of what has worked, why we love it, things like that. So I hope it's been helpful. Please let me know down below. Are you thinking of using Sonlight Language Arts? Do you currently use it? What are your thoughts? Start the conversation down below. I really love when you guys contribute to the videos in that way. But otherwise, guys, that's what I have. Please consider giving it a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and subscribing to the channel if you want to. Otherwise, guys, I will see you in the next homeschool video. All right, take care.